Welcome to the Entrepreneur Show. This is your host, Michael Mara. I'm the CEO and founder of Entre, a social network for entrepreneurs, investors, and freelancers. On this show, we interview the top CEOs, venture capitalists, angel investors, and founders. Connect with me and thousands of other like-minded people by signing up for free at joinentre.com or download our mobile app on iOS and Android.
I see you guys in Animal Capital as someone that almost any person is going to want on their cap table as they're building their businesses, especially consumer-facing companies for sure. Why don't you, for people who aren't super familiar with Animal Capital, I think it'd be great if you want to give people a little bit of background and how it started and how you guys got all connected, because you have an incredible team. And the people that are involved are some of the most famous young people on the internet in today's day and age.
We have I appreciate all of that. I would say we definitely have an incredible team. We have an incredible growing team. We're not quite ready to talk about who's going to be coming on board here pretty soon, but it is super, super exciting and something to pay attention to. So backtracking a little bit, this is, it's very happenstance and circumstantial and a mix of luck and hard work. But a buddy of mine that I made, traveling post Goldman in Japan, his fiance she is the biggest supermodel in Japan. And so when I quit my job at Warner Media going into COVID and, was talking to the WWE and the NFL and a couple of, of growth equity funds about jobs and was just starting to, seriously interview it and venture. I actually spent most of my day raising money for charity in New York that was supporting meal insecure kids in Harlem. And while I was doing that, I was helping this woman, Sumi Matsubara, think about what investing looked like for a celebrity. And I've done a couple of podcasts at this point, and I say this every time, and I mean it every time. I looked at Rich Kleiman as the North Star, and what he's built with Kevin Durant, 35 Ventures, and driving to a point where Kevin's making significantly more money off the basketball court. He just announced a SPAC. Than he is on the court. That was what I wanted, was how do you harness the power of celebrity to actually benefit the founders? It's not about building what UTA and WME and CAA and some of these places that built great venture practices, but the celebrity end up feeling very far away from the actual business model and from the consumer. And so Sumi, someone that had been really successful, had cash and had kind of gone through the regular allocation process of stocks and bonds and real estate. And so we went through an assessment process of, okay, here's where most beauty, influencers sit. It's health and wellness, whether that's, skincare, things that you ingest, food or vitamins, et cetera. Obviously apparel. But there's nothing really in fintech, and there's nothing really, across the sort of like broad band of consumer tech businesses that she could promote, things that support healthier lifestyle, not necessarily that are just fitness related, for example. And so we started, investing, kind of alongside each other early on into COVID, and her fiance and my buddy, Ken, loved the results and loved the beginning, the early innings and the responses from the founders. And Ken started his own venture-backed business that ended up being backed by Lux Capital and Josh Buckley's team. And so Ken pitched me to Josh and said, hey, you should just know this person. And Josh said, who would really find this person interesting is Ashton Kutcher, who, a lot of people know in the venture space that Josh and Ashton are friends, and Ashton's become a really big deal, great investor. Ashton said, who would really benefit from this is my mentee, Josh Richards, who's this social media megastar. So I got a call truly while eating cheeseburgers with my parents mid-COVID. And Ken was calling me over and over and over again, pick up the fucking phone. And I finally stepped away from dinner and I picked up the phone. And there's certain people on this call that definitely know Ken. Ken can be a persistent guy, even when there's no real reason to be persistent. And so I expected to have my time wasted, despite the fact that I love him. And it was him and this kid, Josh, and I didn't know Josh. And so he explained who he was, and we talked, and he said, would you want to help me a little bit? And I said, sure, I'm happy to participate a little bit. And so from that time, which was about well over a year ago now, we started doing all of these founder calls with anyone that Josh had a brand deal on the table with, that he'd already done a brand deal with, people that had been offering free equity and things. And we started deploying dollars. We started not just taking those deals, but being really selective about them, going through a diligence process. And these folks that expected Josh to just take free equity, Josh was actually writing them checks. And for that, Josh was getting significantly outsized, equity portions and, in excess of what those deals that were originally on the table were for. And so he brought some of his, Sway House, folks in as well. Noah and Griffin sort of being the most notable that really, dove into the process. And people just wanted to invest in what we were doing. I was somewhat surprised. Obviously, I think people, oftentimes associate like reputational risk with folks this age, but Josh and Griffin and Noah have proven time and time again that they're going to make responsible decisions. And for me, they showed up on time with founders. They were, thoughtful and asked good questions, and they were really coachable. And a lot of people have seen Josh on, he's a contributor on CNBC now. He just crushes it. And it was awesome. So we decided to launch the fund. Actually, the first investment that we made for the fund, we made precisely a year ago today. And it was a position that we rolled into the fund, and we formally launched the fund the top of 21. We plan to raise between $10 and $15 million. We closed $17 million over the summer. From a group of 90 LPs, anyone listening that wants to start a venture fund, take less than 90 LPs. Not that I don't love every single one of the 90 folks, but they all do have my cell phone number. They all certainly use it. And that's it. And we've been investing out of that fund all year, and it's been a really exciting and interesting process.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I appreciate the backstory, and it's so cool how it all came together. And I love all of that. On top of your team, you guys also have some really interesting advisors and people surrounding you as well, like the Winklevoss twins and Justin Kahn. Can you touch on that for a minute? How important has some of these advisors and other people in tech that have really great reputations? How have they helped you guys out? What have you learned from some of these people as well over the last year?
I mean, you just there's really no replacement for the learning curve. You got to jump up. It is basically 90 degrees steep, and you start talking to people and Michael, I don't know where you went to school, and no offense to anyone in the audience, but like a lot of people graduated from Stanford and a lot of people graduated from Dartmouth, and I went to Cornell, which is, some people regard as a lower Ivy. I think it's the best Ivy League school. But a lot of people are engineers and can get their hands on one big advisor that you think really can move the needle for the business. And there's only so much diligence you can do, because you're ultimately betting on the individual and the individuals who are starting these companies. And so I can't really thank not just the Winklevoss twins, but their business partner Jason Levine at New Flow Partners, who ran consumer at L Catterton, and Justin, and Sukinder Singh Cassidy, who's one of the board members of Urban Outfitters, and Jana Messerschmidt, who was formerly at Lightspeed. I can't thank them enough. I mean, it's not the time to give like an Oscar speech and thank a bunch of people, but like it wasn't just them, right? Like David Sachs took a big shot on me early on and wrote me a check in the fund, and that moved the needle in the fundraising. And Paige Mon, who runs Pear VC, he took a big shot on me and like made intros for me. And you have conversations with these folks about the businesses they're invested in and why they do what they do, and you try to take something from every conversation. I think a lot about the folks like, Mary Meeker and Mood Rogani, and I've had a chance to build a little bit of a relationship with Mood, and he is really thoughtful about product market fit and like the questions that you ask about that and what it means to launch into a new SKU, and some of the places that they've been successful, and some of the places that they haven't been successful, whether at Bond or previously at Kleiner Perkins. So I try to remember to be humble every day, and that not only do I not know everything, but I probably just continue to know the same percentage of the volume that I need to know about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Was there anything, so of all the people that you've connected with, was there any like one common thread from all of these successful, like, even massively key people in the history of Silicon Valley over the last 20 years? What was there any like common thing that you noticed from all of these people that stuck out to you that was like, oh wow, this is like something that more people should know about, and it's kind of like the secret sauce of investing or even starting a startup?
I think there's two things, and one's wild, too broad and not helpful, and the other's overly specific. Um, legitimately being humble and taking like a level of humility in the process that every conversation you have, like I, I I continue to be blown away on the calls when I expect that I might be wasting my time. And you have calls with certain people, and I certainly will not name names of celebrities that I did not like. I can name a lot of names of people that I absolutely love. Um, but I talked to someone that represents the investments for a really big athlete, and it was like their shit doesn't stink and they can't make a bad decision. They won't do deals that are this significant size because it doesn't move the needle for them. And um, while that's great, and sure, there's certain parameters that you probably need because, yeah, at a certain point, if you're, I'm making this up, but if you're Eric Schmidt at Google and you're not writing a $25 million check, you can't get a return that's going to move the needle on your entire volume of personal wealth. Does not matter. And so continuing to be humble and reminding myself each time I get on a call with a founder that, like, whether it's a big deal or a small deal or a favor from one way or the other, that like to try and bring the heat of my energy every single time is, I think, as much of my secret sauce there is. The other side of that, and this is silly, but like it's this weird common thread that has started to come up more and more, is some founders suck at selling a great thing. They do. And you talk to, people that invested in them or chose not to, and it comes down to like, well, like I wasn't compelled by X, and that person needs to be a great salesperson, but like, do they? Like, can't they find someone that is a great salesperson that they can put their hands on? And it's really hard because giving that type of constructive feedback, which is kind of in the same vein as like, you're not good enough, but like, you're not good at this specific thing, even if you're great at these other out of the 10 things that you have to do all day, you're great at these 8, these 2 you struggle with. Someone just needs to give you that feedback. And I have tried to carefully give that feedback where I can, because it kind of comes up like, because you have, left brain people that might not be their brain.
I think that's phenomenal advice. I think you kind of see it. I notice it a lot on Twitter too. And there's the whole VC brags tweet. They have a huge Twitter account just like, for making fun of people who brag about themselves.
Michael, if this was like an anonymous podcast and it was like, just do whatever the fuck, we could do an hour of individuals where you're like, did you run this by someone? And the answer is obviously they didn't.
Yeah, it's funny. There's people I see on, on not just Twitter, but I notice it the most on Twitter, of, whether they're founders or investors. And I'm like, just based off of how they tweet, I don't want to do business with them. Like, and it's funny that, but you can relate it to their personality, how they, post and what they say and how they, talk about themselves and also other people they work with. I think it shows a lot about leadership and making sure that you're using we a lot instead of I, and a lot of those other little things and subtle things that can make a huge difference.
I mean, listen, I'm not trying to blow smoke on my ass, especially as we're talking about being humble, but I've done a lot of interviews and I always see we, and part of that is like Goldman DNA. Like they will take your head and slam it against the wall, not physically most of the time, and say like, we, I don't care if you did this whole fucking, some of the parts, LBO, DCF, comps model, whatever on your own. I don't care. It's we, the team, whatever. So we everything. And then I think it was Emily Chang on Bloomberg was like, Marshall, is it really we, or did you do that? And I was like, well, I did that, but we're a team. And that's like, you're never going to get faulted for saying we, so just stick with it.
Yeah. I think that's a great takeaway for people listening now and also on the recording too. But no, I think I absolutely love that. Kind of switching gears a little bit. You guys have made several investments now. I love a lot of these companies. Some I'm not too familiar with, but some I know and I love, and I wish I could be an investor in them like you guys. What have been your favorite investments to date? Just to give you, so I love Lolly, I love Whoop, Rally Road. Like we did an event with them in New York before the pandemic. It was sweet. Like I'm sure you've been to their office and their little stage room in New York. It's awesome. I don't know if they've changed it up since COVID, but it's super, super cool. They're doing a lot of interesting things. What have been some of your favorite investments thus far? And what are some of the new investments, or I guess industries, just like things that you guys are interested actually in getting into going forward now?
Obviously, all of my investments are my favorite investments. I have no favorite. I have no
Like
favorite.
cliche investor answer, but yeah, I love it.
Yeah, there are a bunch where either the traction's awesome or the founder and I have just like become really, really close. I mean, I'm going to plug one right now, but Dough, Deux, it's a vegan cookie dough. We invested in, I think, her Sabina Leda. She came from M13, which was founded by Carter Room. It's a big VC or consumer VC and incubator. And Carter was upset that Sabina left M13, but then still invested because he couldn't help it because he knew that it should be successful. And then Carter is also an LP of Animal Capital. It's a vegan cookie dough. We invested, I think she was doing like $7,500 of sales a month. We're doing multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales a month. And when you start thinking about the unit economics on like a $9 jar of cookie dough, how many fucking jars of cookie dough you have to sell to do that every single month? And she's going to be on Shark Tank on Friday. I think it's 7:00, 8:00 Central. So if you're listening to this, go tune in. We're really, really excited about that. And there's a huge span of things, right? Like we're invested in a platform called WAP. So we are invested in Whoop and WAP. It's WAP.io, WHOP, and it's essentially a place to buy and license different lines of code and bots. And it's this really, really wildly active, tens of thousands of users Discord community. And it's all people that like, it sounds dumb, but it's kind of this like anachronistic word of like geeks. Because I think being a geek in 2021 is wildly cool. Like I think there's no one like I think it's past the point that there's not a stigma. I think it's like you want to have a thing that you're that passionate about. And because people are buying and licensing these really intricate things, whether those are sneaker bots or those are server space or processing power, whatever it is, this community that's being fostered is tremendous. And there's ways to monetize that community, but you're introducing a marketplace in a way that marketplaces haven't been ever considered before. This is a totally new thing. Really, really passionate about that. I mean, there honestly are so many. We announced, I put it on my Instagram 5 seconds before we got on, a Series C that's not core of business, but we invested in Zen Business. It's essentially a Shopify for service businesses. If you went to like a parochial school or a trade school, and you're a plumber or electrician, or you were an expert in a service business, and you're trying to start your business in Dallas, you're trying to start your business in Bentonville, Arkansas, everything you need from business licenses to operate there to employment agreement, they're making happen. And so when you think fundamentally about what it means to expand financial literacy and expand what makes people's lives better, that's exactly what Animal Capital is really supposed to be about. And so it's like a different take on the same thing, but we love Ross, the founder of that business, and we're really excited. And I think that even at $1.7 billion, which I think was this valuation, I think there's 100 times upside still there. I do think it is Shopify for service businesses, and I think that it's going to be Shopify for services businesses at scale. So that's one. Sorry, I know these are long answers, and I'm like wearing my voice out here, but I'm going to sound like everyone else, I'm sure, on here. I'd say the biggest thing we're interested in is how do we take crypto and Web3 and make it accessible for everyone. We invested in WonderFi for that reason. We're investing in crypto infrastructure, as often as we can and as often as it makes sense for us. And so it's something that we're passionate about. And there's a couple of things in that space that we're not quite ready to announce, but we're actively working in that space with some of the biggest leaders and biggest names there, where we are I think we will ultimately end up incubating businesses in that space because there's things that we don't quite see yet. Where the white space for our LPs, if we can throw, not just our weight, but we can be founders of it, can be meaningful. And that's part of the reason the team has to expand is because there's just one me here.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you said a lot of things there. I dropped in the room chat some of the links to the companies that you mentioned. And if anyone else has the links there to some of the other companies, drop them into the room chat there for everyone else who's listening. But yeah, I think like every single person that almost every person I talk to now is investor or founder is trying to figure out how to get into crypto and Web3 in one way or another.
The applications for that, by the way, are only as limited as as your brain can come up with. I mean, we're having some of the wildest conversations about the way that we're going to participate, and I think that listen. Everyone thinks this. Drew Austin at Redbeard Ventures and 888, the big anonymous crypto. We all think we're going to be have this unbelievable idea. And I think that some people will. I think some people will really change the way that we view the digital licensing blockchain sort of, not indelible, but, unchangeable, blockchain track record as for the future.
100%. It's something I've had a few conversations with the founder of BitClout and DeSo. If you're familiar with them, they're really looking to provide what's basically the solution for putting social networks on the blockchain. And they have a really interesting platform. And now they're starting to invest into other companies to build on top of it as well. And there's a good chance that we're going to be integrating their blockchain into our app as well, and getting deeper into that because there's a lot of opportunity for people to make money on the internet today, but what's hurting a lot of people, especially that use these freelancing platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, is that they're taking a lot of fees. And they can't get the money in the currency that they want either. So that's a huge thing that we're looking to tackle with this. Right now, it's just Stripe, but there's huge applications for letting people actually be able to monetize in a social platform or professional platform in crypto for their services online, doing websites or coding or graphic design, and then just getting paid with that in a bunch, whatever currency that they want. So there's huge applications for everything. I think there's going to be a massive amount of things coming out in the next 6 to 12 months in this space for sure.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, we'll kind of keep things rolling with, after the crypto talk, we'll maybe have to do a follow up around that conversation. That could be a whole podcast in and of itself here. But I wanted to ask you a couple of things around. So you've connected with a lot of these social influencers, right? And are you seeing? Where do you see the future of this going? Because what I'm looking at from my perspective is I see many more people getting into not only angel investing, but tech and stock investing as well, just in general. But as I look at all of the influencers and celebrities, athletes as well, like you mentioned, Kevin Durant and whatnot, they're starting to get into this stuff heavily now as well. Do you see this as do you think this is going to be basically, very common going forward now? Do you think that almost every influencer is going to get into angel investing? Almost every athlete, celebrity is going to start getting into all of these tech companies and startups? Or how do you view that? Because I see it as very as much a trend, and it seems like that's going to be a huge part of the future of venture capital.
It's a mix. I mean, the answer is yes. I think there's so much more white space. you have to kind of look at it. There's a couple of different sort of like competing cycles that are going into this. And I think that the first one to sort of consider is the history of celebrity and social influence, and that's for everyone. That's athletes, musicians, actors, and classic influencers. You used to be able to have 5 or 10,000 followers on a platform and make enough money to live your life. Like that you could drive brand deals that would be enough money for you to have a happy, successful, making $100,000+ a year life. It's not, that number's not 5 or 10,000 followers anymore. It's not 50. And it's not really 100,000 anymore. It's probably 500, 600,000 followers across a couple of platforms. And even at that point, the companies are not that excited to pay cash. They'll give you free product. Maybe they'll lend you products. You have to really prove your attribution model. And so that bar has moved up again. And that bar is millions of followers. And you look down the pipe at some of these athletes that just had the opportunity to monetize for the first time. And they're doing some simple things. They're doing apparel, and they're going to the local car dealership and getting a free car and promoting the car dealership. And I think that stuff will certainly continue. And I think there's a lot of white space there. And so you put that aside for 1 second. And then on the other side, you have a really, really, really hot venture market. I mean, you have people valuing, emails from a specific person at $10 million. This just happened from someone that everyone in this room would know. And when email was sent, I saw, hey, I would invest in this at this valuation for whatever. I was like, holy shit, that is just literally just an email. And so I look at that and I say, like, okay, how do these things work together? And so what we're trying to do, and I think all we can do is work with celebrities that are interested in the space and really helping founders and really taking their time in it, not just being this commoditized thing, really spending time being thoughtful about creative campaigns and thoughtful about go-to-market and thoughtful about how do I connect this person with people that are really going to move the needle for them in their business. And there's a lot more white space to it, but I don't think it is this like limitless, topless thing. I think that there's a lot of space for it, but I think that there's going to be good actors and bad actors in it. And for me, I want to encourage everyone to do it. Like, I think that it only makes my model stronger to have more people participating and showing that the value of celebrity in the space is exciting.
Yeah, that I totally agree. Where do you see, do you think things are going to continue to trend like in the same direction that we're going? Just because like I'm seeing the same thing. There's ridiculous valuations out there. There's a lot of money being put into startups. And I think the more quality people, especially influencers and people that are around them, it makes the selling point that much more powerful. Do you see any slowdown to this happening? You're much more in tune with the market, I would say, than myself. So are you seeing things continuing to trend the way they are? What's your...
I haven't seen a sign of a slowdown. I mean, I haven't. I think people are more nervous now about it, but with no actual like sort of evidence to back it up. I think that the interesting thing is that because people are like, well, all these businesses are going to fall apart, whatever. Like, well, they might, but also like they might not. And the reality is that they're taking these big funding rounds for these big ideas, and they're taking in enough money in these giant rounds to get to the idea, to get to to a minimum viable product, and to get to market with this specific thing, or to, we invested in Colossal, which says they're bringing back the woolly mammoth. I can't quite talk about what their funding situation is right now, but it's positive. And we have plenty of money to get to viable embryos of freaking woolly mammoths. And that, my expectation is that's not tomorrow or next year. It's coming down the pipe in a couple of years. And the exciting thing for me about that is I don't care if the funding cycle gets screwed up in the next 18 months. Yeah, it's not great for my business, but for that business and that specific clinic, it's exactly what they're doing. They're kind of buckling up for winter.
Yeah, that I agree. I've heard some other people doing that as well. That company is insane. I've heard, I saw that when the article dropped. There was a big announcement. It was like all over the internet. They were bringing back the woolly mammoth, which is just insane. I mean, to think about, and that just goes to show what yeah, there's crazy evaluations, but these companies are doing crazy things now, especially with space and climate change. I mean, there's some serious big problems starting to get solved out there, and it makes it justify people pay big money to solve big problems, right? So, go ahead.
I agree.
Yeah. As we get to wrapping up here, I do want to open it up for some Q&A. So if you do have a question for Marshall, start dropping it in the room chat, and we'll start getting to things as well. I see one question here about using Telegram bot NFTs. Okay, so I think, well, this is an interesting thing too, because Discord just kind of sneak peek that they were getting into NFTs. Do you think there's going to be some other messaging and community platforms get into this as well? Like, where do you see that kind of going? Because Discord, it makes a lot of sense to do it, but they got a lot of backlash from it, and a lot of people say that they didn't want it happening to Discord. So, what's your thoughts on that? And do you see other platforms getting into the same thing?
First of all, there's going to be more platforms like Telegram. Like I Telegram's totally having a moment. I'm on Telegram. That's not it. I can tell you with 100% certainty that there are platforms that you do not know that you're going to use for messaging right now, whether that's textual or voice, that you're going to be using in the next 6 months. You're going to be using them every day. I think that that's really, really coming. I think that there's trends from other parts of the world that we are slowly adopting in the West, and it's coming. Two, on the NFT side, like, listen, if it makes sense, it has to. I'm not interested in something where it's an NFT for the sake of having an NFT. If there's a reason to have it, or a reason that textual or voice or video transaction between people or groups is meaningful for something, then great. Other than Zola, which was a movie that came out this year, or I think it was this year during COVID, that was starring Nick Braun, who's also cousin Greg in Succession, and he's also an investor in Animal Capital. That was based on a Twitter chain. That was like an 150 tweet long story. That probably deserves to be an NFT and as an exchange between people and as a social contract or whatever. And there's TikTok videos that people are going to turn into NFTs. But I think in the context of a messaging app, I would need like a really, really good use case for why. I mean, why it's interesting.
Yeah.
Also, there's this, sorry to interrupt you and myself, but there's also a difference between having an NFT and like a digital license, and there being like a transaction record that doesn't go away. Those are two different things.
For sure. I think there's going to be a big, I mean, you're starting to see a lot more people using platforms like Telegram, but also like Signal too, that are more decentralized and, encrypted, that aren't controlled by Facebook and some of the, well, I guess Meta now, but some of these other larger companies. And I'll bring that up real quick. I'm curious your thoughts on the Facebook rebrand, number one, and number two, where you see that kind of going, or any thoughts on the metaverse, since it's a hot topic right now.
Yeah, it's all I talk about. So first, two things. One is like, who cares that they rebranded? I mean, at some point we're going meta. I know we will adopt that, but
I'm always in the
I just don't really, it doesn't matter to me. Two is, if you don't think that hundreds of thousands of people in this country and other countries have Oculus headsets that they're using every day, and they're using them in the more classic sense of what metaverse is, you're wrong. That shit is happening, and that shit is growing fast. I think I'm compelled by it. I'm compelled by the more traditional use of the word metaverse. I think that there's lots of other platforms that people are just starting to take notice of that aren't quite what you think of when you think of metaverse. And Matthew Ball wrote a series of papers about the metaverse, which are spectacular to read if you're interested, and they're on his website for anyone to read. But there's companies, plugging my own company, called State Space. Wayne Mackey's based in Ohio, just raised a multi-billion-dollar valuation, that they're creating training modules for major video games. So if you're like trying to get into Fortnite, or there's a new test case for building structures in Fortnite, and you want to train with people, or you want your favorite Twitch streamer to build you a module, that's where you go as State Space. And that is freaking compelling. And that shared community and that participation in the metaverse is really, really interesting to me. And so it's sort of those next step things that people are talking about, because I mean, when I was at Warner Media, I talked to a business that I cannot remember the freaking name of it. It starts with a T. Not that anyone would know it. I don't think it exists anymore, but they were an AR advertising platform. So whether it was through Snapchat or it was through VR, you put on goggles and you're watching, NBA from the sideline, they were going to control those billboards in your experience, and they're going to sell that as a new ad. And it didn't work. It was just too early, but it's a good idea. And it's those things that are going to create new ad units where I sort of say, okay, can someone other than Meta X Facebook do this? Because how many startups are we going to talk to that are so tied to Facebook for their advertising and their growth and their ad spend?
100%. I think there's, especially for the advertising space, it's going to be really interesting. And I think right now, Facebook definitely does have a head start because of the hardware with the Oculus and everything else. But it's going to be interesting to see what other hardware comes out over the next few years for sure. And then how other people play into that.
As someone who had to directly manage the, I don't work there anymore, so I don't care, disaster that was investing in Magic Leap at AT&T/Warner Media. Yeah, there's space for other hardware.
Do you know what happened? They got so much money, and then did they even ship a product? I can't remember what exactly happened.
They had a product you could buy that was like a developer level product. I have a lot of comments to make about that and other companies that are similarly situated that maybe we can save them for the Anonymous podcast, because they're people that are very around my fund. But you have to, as an investor, sometimes command accountability, and you don't want to as a VC investor. You just want to trust. And they had a great vision, and they just got crushed.
Yeah, it's wild. There was another company like that. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but they basically invented the smartphone before the smartphone, and they had the exact same designs as, Apple and all of that. And yeah, it's really interesting. There's a documentary on, I can't remember the name of it right now. If anyone remembers, drop it in the chat. But I want to continue on with some of the questions here. So there's a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say we can try and do. I mean, I know there's a bunch now. I just looked, so we can try and do these like rapid fire. I won't spend so much time.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was going to suggest too. I love it. We're on the same wavelength there. So there's someone asking, they're a specialty influencer. They in the medical space, tens of thousands of followers. We have other influencers and people looking to become influencers, listening in and everything too. Do you have any advice for them as they're as you've seen and worked with like mega influencers? Do you have any advice for people who are trying to be content creators full time and be an influencer and monetize that?
Yes. Put out consistent content, let people know what your messaging is, period. 2 is be flexible on the platforms that you're on. Obviously, there'll be places that butter your bread a little bit, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever it is. But there will be new platforms that you need to be flexible to, and you need to be flexible to those. And 3rd, as you think about exclusive paid content, live events, whatever, again, be consistent, be on message, pick a platform, stick to it. And listen, sending DMs and collaborating with other people, it works. It's really, really hard. And as someone that did 90 live Instagrams with people when I had literally no followers, it isn't easy. But that is the way to beat your head against the wall and make something work.
Love it. What advice would you give to people who are raising their first funds from LPs, or like
raise a smaller fund. If you have personal capital, family and friends, go ahead and close it with the plan that you're going to do like an incubated thing where you do a couple $1,000,000 and do, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 investment and start to build a track record of those markups. You're not going to get rich on the management fees for a really long time. I certainly experience I can speak to not getting rich on any management fees. And I've got, kind of a regular small fund. Just start and then close it and keep going.
Love it. How do you take care of your mental health and wellness?
Best question on here by far.
A lot of ups and downs. It's one of the reasons why our logo is like that. Something that, one of the reasons why we even started, all of this, and to, just give people a community and a network to, be around like-minded people. So, I'm very curious about this as well.
It's really, really hard in this space and in any space to maintain, especially in a world where some people want to do in person, some people don't want to do in person. There's not enough time to do things anymore because we got used to being able to do 16 meetings a day. Like that's gone. So, for me, honestly, I'm going to turn the computer around. I know you can't do this on the podcast, but I have Seinfeld on during the day. I just do. So
love Seinfeld.
It plays in the background during a lot of things I'm doing. I'm able to still focus. It helps. I've met a lot of new people, and that happens a lot in startup world and LP world and then VC world and whatever. The people that really care about you, that give you the space to grow into that new realm that you're participating in and are still your best friends and your loved ones and girlfriends and boyfriends and parents and whatever and best friends. Just keep those people close to you and remember who is there the entire time because they're the ones that are going to keep your cup feeling full.
I love that. Yeah, it's it's something that I think a lot of people had to really go through and deal with over the last couple years, especially. So I really appreciate that advice. I love Seinfeld, and I think just even that's why I love throwing on comedies, all that stuff late at night. Just getting some laughter, some of that in helps so much, and it's just simple things too that can ease some of the tension. So I absolutely love that. As we wrap up here, Marshall, really appreciate all your time and everything. What would be, if you have any final parting words, piece of advice, if there's anything that you would like to share to encourage either a young entrepreneur or an investor, or something that could help them as they're, continuing to grow in their careers, what would you like to say? And definitely share where people can find you, learn more about Animal Capital, all of that as well.
I say this a lot because it's advice that I've gotten from people that are listening right now, but whatever that thing is that you're thinking about doing, just do it. Just do it. So often it is not writing words on a page or sending an email or making a deck, whatever. We're going to create, you're going to run a startup, make the fucking deck. Everyone, you got PowerPoint. If you don't have PowerPoint, you write a big email, explain what your business plan is to someone that might take a flyer on you that has PowerPoint. There's no reason not to do the things that you're thinking about doing because we only get one shot at all this. And I wouldn't be doing this if this didn't make me really happy. Animal Capital Fund One's been awesome. Where to find me? Please don't message me on LinkedIn. I don't respond on LinkedIn. It's like a hellhole. It's hard to vet who's what. It sounds dumb. Instagram and Twitter. If you're interested in following or listening or whatever, seeing what we're investing in, how we're investing in things, what I think about things, or connecting with me directly, that's how to get to me. Just at Marshall Sandman on both platforms.
I love it. Yeah, we ended up connecting through Instagram. So it's definitely, it's interesting how these things happen too. I've connected with a lot of people through just, social platforms. One of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing is because we don't like LinkedIn, and especially it's not great for entrepreneurs, and we think there's a better way to do it. So yeah, totally agree with that. It's kind of ridiculous, all the salespeople and just nonsense. But we're really glad that you're able to make this happen, Marshall. Appreciate the time, man. Look forward to seeing all the amazing things that you and Animal Capital are going to be doing over the coming years. And hopefully we can do this again sometime, and would love to stay connected regardless and see if there's other ways that we can collaborate together.
Listen, from your mouth to God's ears, this is a very, very long game that we're in here. So yeah, and happy to come back anytime.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you, Marshall. Thank you, everyone who tuned in today and who was listening on the recording. If there's anything that we can do to help you as you're starting your company, growing your company, we're always here to help and be supportive. So make sure you download the Entre app or check us out on joinentre.com. But with that being said, Marshall, really appreciate it, man. Have a great rest of your week. And thanks again for coming on.
Bye, Michael.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Entrepreneur Show. If you'd like to connect and network with other like-minded people, entrepreneurs, investors, freelancers, and startups, check out our app or go to our website, joinentre.com. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. If there's anything that we can do to help you, please reach out to us and let us know.